Hello,
Yeah.
good morning. Welcome everybody to another amazing live stream here at Code Noobs. Thank you for joining us. I'm here with my buddies Danny and Randall, and we
What's
are
up?
ready to teach you some coding. Good
What
morning,
up? What
guys.
up?
How you guys doing? Happy Saturday. It's
Yeah,
Saturday
good.
the 24th at 9 a.m., by the way.
Yeah, and it's like an auspicious day because it's 2/24/24.
Oh,
Oh yeah, it
I didn't
is.
think about
Nice.
that. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we totally planned that. We planned that.
Yeah.
Welcome to
Yeah.
the auspicious live stream.
The
Welcome,
auspicious one.
everybody. Welcome. What have you guys been up to this week? Anything crazy, anything amazing or wild happen in your life?
Busy week. It's been a busy week.
Yeah,
Been doing a lot
Hmm.
of coding and a lot of work this week.
Hmm.
nice.
I've been working on a whole bunch of like business related learning as opposed to coding
Yeah.
particular stuff like
Nice.
email marketing,
Oh,
writing
nice.
sales copy, all that fun stuff.
Very cool. I used to do a lot of email marketing. I used to actually work for an email validation company. Do you guys know what that is?
I
Yeah,
Yeah.
do.
because you told us.
Oh, okay. I guess other people don't. That's true. I probably have told you that before. It's basically like if
Mhm.
you have an email list that has like old email addresses in it, you use one of these companies to clean your email list so you get better email deliverability. So I used to be
Mhm.
like very much into like tech sales and explain email marketing to people all the time. It's a pretty complicated subject, believe it or not. Seems so easy, just send an email, but not quite.
It
Not
is.
quite.
Yeah.
Didn't they
So
just change the rules on that too, though, where you now have to have like an unsubscribe thing or something now, like
we've
when you
always sort of had to. Um, see that this is something I think I know Randall and I used to do a lot of SEO, and I think people like have this understanding that there's like sort of internet police or like people that actually police
yeah,
this
right.
stuff, and it's not very
Nope.
true. Like even with those spam rules for email marketing, somebody has to report you like multiple times for anything to ever happen.
And
And
your
so,
government actually has to want to do anything about it.
yeah, like your government has to care, and
Well, I heard this is also in part coming from Google now, apparently. Changed their and that's more
yeah,
important because they actually do can monitor stuff.
yeah.
Whereas like,
There is
nobody
like
else does.
basically the worst that can happen is you get thrown into there are companies out there. There's one called like Spam House, and they track like spamming email addresses and IP addresses. So,
Oh,
and then they share that data among the email providers. So when you think about it, there's only a couple big email providers. There's like Google, which is like Gmail. There's like Hotmail, Yahoo, and maybe Microsoft Outlook. And outside of that, there's like there's not many other email service providers. So once they know that your email address is spammy, then you're kind of screwed. Like you're
yeah.
on a list, and then it's really tough to get off that list. So yeah, but there are ways to do it, and there's companies that help you do that. But anyway, we're talking about software development, not email
So what
marketing.
was the topic this week?
Yeah. So I didn't even get into it. The topic this week is how to learn faster as a developer because I bet all these people in here want to just like become a senior developer, right? You don't
You
want to
know,
like start.
actually, before we get into it,
Oh,
anyone who's watching either live now or later on, let us know down below in the comments. Do you want to
yeah.
code faster? Do you wish you were a senior developer already earning six figures plus, maybe even seven figures if you're really good?
Yeah. By the way, good morning, Chris. Chris is like always here, man. Chris is the best.
Hmm.
He's like always here on
Yeah. Nine
time.
o'clock.
Good
On the
morning.
nose.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. So do you guys want to learn faster? I think people want to learn
Mm.
faster, right? Because
I think
who
everybody
wants to
wants to
sit
learn
in
faster.
tutorial hell forever? Who wants to just like be a junior developer forever? So today we're here to share some tips and tricks that we've learned along the way and some of the things that we've helped our coaching clients with to help them learn faster. So, I mean, let's just get into it, right? Like
Let's
we
do
only
it.
got a half hour and we got some gold, I think. So, who wants to start? You guys have Randall? Oh, go for it, man.
I'll start. So, my one is focus.
Mm,
Okay. Now I'm not
Yeah.
talking about drink a bunch of coffee and zen out and get into that Mikhail Chikensky, whatever his name is, flow. I'm actually
Oh.
talking about, I think it's an anagram or acronym, whichever it is. Follow one
Oh.
course until successful.
Mm.
That
Mm,
focus. So
yeah.
like this is something that I think it's part of the learning journey where you just follow the next shiny object.
Hmm.
And but what happens is you really just keep on going around and around and around and getting lost. So even though it feels like things are going slow as can be, if you just follow one course until you become proficient at it and then go on to the next one, that can help you learn a lot faster because we think that, if I'm learning this and I find something else that's really cool, I'll just switch to that and then start learning that. But you don't account for all the time that you lose in between because
Hmm.
when you stop doing something and start doing something else, your brain has to get into the rhythm of it. You have to find out all the different things. Whereas if you just stayed with that one course, you'll be able to spend all that time learning and actually progress a bit further.
I like that a lot. I,
I like
you-
that one too. Oh, I was gonna say it's
I,
like, well, it's like everybody has the experience of like, if you work somewhere for a while, you do the same kind of stuff over and over, and then you get just faster and faster and better at it, right? It becomes like kind
mm,
of second nature. So that's, yeah, I think that's a really good one.
yeah, I think that can actually be pretty tough as a beginner because
Oh yeah.
in software development, things build on each other too. So like you start learning HTML and you're like, ooh, like CSS seems so cool. Like now I can style things. Like I just want to jump into that. But if you really want to get better at HTML faster, it's best to just focus on that and learn everything you can before you jump into CSS, right? And that I think that happens for everything. And then when you get into more advanced, then it's just like all these different languages and frameworks and
Well,
yeah,
also, spending the time on HTML and CSS because
right.
their HTML and CSS are not at all the shiny object. They never, I mean, not since like
Yeah.
1997 have they been the shiny object. And so like everybody wants to progress to like JavaScript and React and Next and whatever else is out there. But
Yeah.
it's like really all of that foundation, all of that is built on the foundation of HTML and CSS. So if you skip out of there before you're ready, it's just
Yeah.
gonna hurt you later on because you're gonna have to come back and learn it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
Building those foundations is super important.
Yeah. And I think you hit upon the sort of one of my points, which was like choosing the right programming language to start with or like at your level, right? Like you don't want to start with React. You're gonna be super confused if you start there, right? Um, and even if you're, understanding what your goal is, if your goal is to become a web developer, then you're going to want to start with HTML, CSS, maybe Python, right? But maybe not Python. Like if you want to, that would be more for like a data scientist web developer. Or you can. I mean, Danny's like really good at Python, Django development, web development with Python. But
You
yeah,
can
so
do it all, but it's more, yeah, it's more back end, I would say, centric, right?
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Definitely.
totally. So understanding what your goal is, because that's going to actually lead you in the direction of what you want to learn. I mean, if you want to build software for like enterprise software, you might want to start with C or Java or something like that versus HTML. So yeah, I think that's a good one. What else you guys got? You got anything, Danny?
Yeah, I would say like, I mean, I think you're right. Like knowing where you want to go, also knowing why you're doing it, I think is really important. Like what motivates you, why you're actually doing this in the first place.
Yeah.
And I would also add too, like I think like what really does help you move faster too is sharing.
Mm,
Having people to actually communicate with, share your stuff with, and talk about the things you're learning with, because that always like we forget how much like learning is a social thing. It always is, because you're relying on, people in the past who put this stuff together that you're using as materials, and having people to work with, at the time that you're learning just makes a world of difference. It makes it move so much faster, and you benefit from like their insights as well, which can help
yeah,
you get around those problems faster. Yeah.
absolutely. And that's one of the benefits of joining our mentoring, right?
Yeah.
Is that you can actually converse with other people who are sort of in the same spot as you, which is hard to find when you're a developer. I think that's one of the challenges that when you're, particularly when you're a new developer, it's hard to find people who are sort of at your level and you feel comfortable around like sharing your code. And so that's something that we can offer to you guys as well. But yeah, I definitely get that. It's important to make sure that you're sharing your code because that feedback is so important. One of the ones that I have is actually I think a little bit interesting because when you're a new developer, we tend to just like watch a bunch of tutorials, right? That's sort of what you're told to do is like watch a bunch of tutorials. And, we call that like tutorial hell, right? Because you're just in this never ending loop of tutorials. And I feel like that actually harms more than it helps. If you think about, I think about this pretty often actually, senior developers, I think rarely actually watch tutorials, right? They don't like go online and just watch a tutorial. They are developing code actively all the time and they use documentation to learn. Now, when you are new, a tutorial is important to watch, right? Because it's sort of giving you a guideline and walking you through the steps more than if you just watched it, if you just went to a documentation. Although some documentation has like tutorial projects sort of built into it, which is nice.
Yeah.
But I think, as a new developer, you should be spending probably less time actually watching tutorials and more time coding because the best way to actually learn is by doing, right? And I think I personally got stuck in this trap when I was a new developer, which was I was just watching, tutorials nonstop. Even like I would just sit in front of my TV and watch a coding tutorial without even a computer in front of me. And that's like dangerous because you start thinking that you know how to do things without actually being able to. Because when you actually code, you run into issues that don't show up in the tutorial, right? The
Yeah.
tutorials are like curated. I'm literally, most tutorials are there's code on one screen and they're just copying that over into VS Code on the other. And it looks like they're building that, but it's already pre built. And so you don't get a lot of those small challenges and the insight of like what's actually going on in that developer's head when they're actually building that. So I would say that to me is like a huge one is don't spend so much time actually watching tutorials and actually build some projects and build things that are creative.
I was gonna say that's actually gonna be one of my two. It's like projects are like the best way, I think. And like
Yeah.
starting right off early on, like it doesn't matter if it seems like it's outside of your scope.
Hmm.
Just set yourself a goal and have a defined project so you have something to work through and actually accomplish. Because you're right. I mean, those problems, those are the things you'll remember forever. Like when you
Yeah.
overcome a problem that you in a real world situation, like you'd never forget it. And it makes it so much better
100%.
moving forward because then you know how to like, you get also get a handle too on like how do I start out like, you know, designing a project, building it, going about the whole process of it, that takes a lot of work too and practice and just time. So yeah, I think that's a really good one.
Yeah. You
And
make
one of
me,
the things
yeah.
that has been one of the things that I think worked very well for us because we all, in when there was huge tech layoffs, we all went and we changed careers into development. And
Hmm.
one of the things that I worked really well for us was having a group of other like-minded individuals that we were working with. Because
Yeah.
back when I was in veterinary school, they would always tell us, see one, do one, teach one. So
Mhm.
whenever you're learning something, you see somebody else do it and then you do it yourself, and then you teach somebody else how to do it. And that's something
Yeah.
that we were all doing for the past few years before we even started Code Noobs, is we would just be doing our own things throughout the week. So we would be watching videos or reading
Yeah.
books or figuring out how to do something so we'd see it, and then we'd end up doing it ourselves. And then when we meet up each week, we'd teach each other what we learned that week. So whether we knew it or not, we were actually doing that methodology, and that helped us learn and continue progressing at a much faster rate.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't even think about that, but we totally were doing that. Like we were without even really thinking about it. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, just naturally. I like
Yeah.
Chris's point too. He said, he's like now he's actually building it. He's no more watching tutorial like he'll watch tutorials for a particular thing, but no more like CSS in 2 hours. And that's
Yeah.
also a good one. Is like there's so much stuff out there that tries to grab your attention by convincing you can do this thing really fast. Like learn. I've seen
Yeah.
so many learn Python in 24 hours or learn JavaScript in 24 hours. It's like you're not going to.
Yeah.
You might learn how to like declare a variable, but that's like about it. Like you don't know it after that because it takes time.
Yeah.
So just also like not falling into the trap too of like thinking it can be done really fast like that because it's this those are lies. It's
Yeah,
not gonna,
totally.
yeah, it doesn't happen that way.
Yeah. It made me think of this other thing too, which is when you're doing these tutorials, right? The person who's making the tutorial does it at a particular time in the evolution of man, I guess you could say, right? Uh but the reality is software development changes very quickly, right? Like these technologies, they change all the time. So you're watching a tutorial and more than likely it's outdated already by the time you're watching it, like for most of them. So whatever you're watching is, yeah, probably 90% correct, but there's things that you're probably not aware of that are broken in that tutorial. And if you're following that just by watching it and assuming that that's correct without doing it, when you actually go to do it, you're going to run into those issues and then have to deal with them on your own. And I think that's another point too, is that you have to learn to deal with these things on your own because you're going to run into challenges and that tutorial is not going to have the answer in it. So you have to start thinking like a programmer who's, able to problem solve. And that's one of the biggest challenges, I guess, for new developers is how to problem solve, which we have a live stream about.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention on that note too, I think like now that AI is out, it's available to the public, that is a great one too for like learning faster. It
Yeah.
also teaches you how to ask questions. It teaches you how to identify a problem because the only way you're going to get good responses is if you put in a good prompt that's related to what you're
Yeah.
working on. So like I think like for new developers too, using AI in combination with good documentation can really also help, you work through these challenges and problems. Like try to solve them on your own. And I would definitely recommend too, like when you're first starting out, like try the documentation first. If you find that too confusing, then go and ask the question. And maybe you'll find out too your question needs to be phrased differently or reworded, and it'll get you closer to that point too, way quicker.
Yeah. I was actually speaking to somebody in the group this week. I think his name's Victor, and he's a little bit advanced. He's like on like React at this point, starting to learn React. And that's something that I thought was cool is that he tries not to use Chat GPT for everything, right? He tries to go through the traditional routes of like looking up online. He's made posts in the group sharing his code, which I encourage everyone to do, right? Because we have a community here. You guys are welcome to
Yeah.
use it and post inside the group. That's what we're here for, right? And we answer those things very quickly.
Plus
And
other
other
gives
people
other
do as
people a
well.
chance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a great way too. Is like if you're running into a problem, post it in the group because you'll probably get a response pretty quickly. You were gonna say something, I think somebody.
Well,
Go ahead,
yeah, I
Randy.
am going to say something, but on to that point you just mentioned, I
Yeah,
have heard a couple people complain about not having a coding buddy, and I have yet to see anybody actually post in the group saying, "Hey, I'm looking for coding buddies. Is there anybody
yeah,
out there looking for a coding buddy?"
Yeah.
very
So,
true.
yeah, that's a
It's a
helpful
great
hint.
place. Yeah,
But one thing that I wanted to say is it is very uncomfortable learning anything and feeling like it's going so slow because
mm,
all of us have experienced this. We've all talked about this at various times throughout our journey where it just feels like you're learning so slow. And I think all of us have learned immensely fast, but there's a saying that we overestimate what we can do in a year and we underestimate what we can do in a decade. And I think that's very true when it comes to coding because in a year, yeah, you're probably not going to make you're not going to be hired by Google in a year. Hate to break it to
yeah.
you. I'll be the first person on, on some platform who tell you you won't be hired by Google in a year. But in
But
10
you can
years,
get hired by somebody in a year.
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. Not
and in
Google
10
necessarily.
years, it's very likely that you could be hired by Google or find a even better job that you like better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people like idolize FANG companies like Facebook, Apple. And I honestly, I think if most people were given that opportunity, they probably wouldn't like it as much as working for somebody else. I mean, besides, you know, just the pressure of working at a company like Google or something like that, because I think a lot of people feel pressure once they work there that they have to keep their job there too, especially since all these companies are laying off people. So they have to prove that they're like the most qualified developer, like in their office. But also, it's a lot of those companies are location dependent. You have to live in like California, like Silicon Valley to work at a lot of those companies. So
Where
yeah,
you where rent is like $10,000 a month.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like the actual living conditions are not really great at all. So
Well, not to mention too, when you're working like a huge company like that, what you're able to do might be very limited also. Like
yes,
you might
that's
only be
true.
able to work on a very small part of something or one aspect of a larger project. Whereas like when you're working for a smaller company and stuff, you might be able to do the whole thing or be involved in the whole process, which is very different. And you learn a lot more, I think, that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. I have another one. And this is to gamify your learning, right? And there's a lot of different ways that you can do this, but we've seen, I mean, there's scientific evidence showing that gamification works really well at helping people learn and stay motivated.
Super better.
Yeah,
Super
that's
better.
McGonagall.
There's a
Yeah,
whole
right.
book about it.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Super
There's a
better.
book about,
Yes.
yeah, super better. So, but you know, like one of the things that I used a long time ago when I was starting to learn CSS was a website called CSS Battle. And I think that's a cool one if you're trying to learn
Yeah,
CSS because they
it's actually fun.
basically, the way it works is they give you a small image. It's almost like an icon or something like that. And they're like, okay, you have to code this in CSS, but as few lines of code as possible. And you get scored based on how many characters you use to actually like duplicate this image. And then it's scored, and there's like a scoreboard where you can see all of like the leaders. And it's really cool. There's like hundreds and hundreds of these. So it's a great way to learn some of the strange CSS things that you can do because CSS is like very, very extensive.
Yeah, you can
So
do
that's a great
anything.
way that I started learning CSS was by using that website, CSS Battle. But there's other ways too, right? You can, um, you know, challenge other people in the group. You can there's plenty of ways that you can gamify your
Well,
learning.
there's also, yeah, there's a lot of sites that also do because a lot of like employers when you go through the hiring process, they'll have you do like a skills test. And
Yeah,
there's a lot
like
of
leak
sites
code.
that you can go do practice skills tests basically at
Yeah,
various levels.
yep,
And they're a great way too, like to see like, to test your knowledge or see where you're at, or just to like encounter, if you just feel like you don't want to work on a project, you want to just do some problems kind of. It's a problem-oriented way of going about it and kind of
yeah.
gamifies it, which is nice. Yeah.
Some of those would be Leak Code and Hacker Rank. Those are two pretty
That's
popular
that's the
ones.
one I was trying to think of was
Yeah.
HackerRank. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple popular ones, but yeah, that's great because you're competing with, you know, other people who are at your level, so you feel more motivated to do that. I have another in case you guys don't, but if you do,
Oh,
go
yeah.
for it.
Well,
Oh,
okay, so
Go ahead.
I have something. I have the paradox of learning faster.
Mm,
So this is a little bit of a story, and maybe it's an anecdote. I don't exactly
yeah,
know,
we
but
only got
basically
7 minutes left. Just kidding.
I know, right? But there's this guy who wanted to be, I think it was a monk or maybe he wanted to learn martial arts, something like that. And so he went to the master, and he's like, "How long does it take to become a master in this?" And the guy says, "8 years." And he's like, "Well, what about if I try really hard? If I put in twice the effort of anyone else, and I really just focus on this completely?" And the guy says, "Okay, in that case, 15 years." And it's kind of like it's the paradox of trying to do things too quickly because
Mm,
there's some natural order to how quickly you're able to learn something. And if you
yeah,
try harder, you're going against the natural order of things. And more likely, you're probably not enjoying it. And
yeah,
I don't know about you guys, but when I have enjoyed doing things, I have learned so much more quickly than when I'm doing it when it's forced. And like I understand that people sometimes need to do it because they need to change careers or whatever, but if you actually can slow down just a little bit and find the joy in it as opposed to just doing it like a task, you'll probably learn a lot more quickly.
yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. I noticed that when I do or did passion projects, things that I wanted to do for myself, I was able to sit down and code for longer periods of time, right? I could
Oh,
code
yeah.
for 5, 6 hours at a time easily and be like loving it the whole time. Whereas, you know, building tic-tac-toe or whatever is like not interesting. So I got bored after 15 minutes and stopped, right? And I think that that just goes to your point is that there's a natural flow and like getting into that is really important as a developer because you can learn for a lot longer. Were you going to say something, Danny?
Yeah, I was also gonna say to your point too, I think like when you're trying to learn faster, the impulse I think is to just keep grinding, but like taking breaks, taking care of yourself, that'll like contribute to your learning way faster than just sitting there and trying to solve because you stay motivated, you stay engaged with it, and you give yourself a chance to kind of process things before you just try to move on to the next thing. So you actually
Yeah.
retain the information.
Yeah. One other one that I would have is to join or build a community. I know we said join before, but I think building a community is really cool because let's say, you know, you have this community, right? People have this community, but owning a community is a little bit different because it keeps you committed to it, right? So if you don't already have a local meetup or something like that, go and start one, right? And that also builds your authority as a developer when you actually go to apply for a job and you say, I run a local meetup of developers. That looks amazing on your resume, right?
Oh
Because
yeah.
that's you showing your employer that you are literally teaching other people or facilitating developers to learn, which is huge. They love that stuff, right? It shows you have soft skills, it shows you have initiative, and it shows that you're really interested in what you're doing. So I would definitely recommend that. And there's so much value, like we said before, out of getting out of teaching other people, right? Because it's one thing to like watch a tutorial, it's another thing to actually code something. But then when you have to explain that to someone else, you have to think about
Yeah.
it a whole different way, and that helps you understand it so much more. So I would recommend that one as well.
That is a good one. I like that.
Yeah. Anything else you guys got? Any
I mean,
I
I
think
would
we just
add.
shared it all. We
We
overshared.
should. Wow, yeah, that's good. I would definitely add like to just routines, like getting in habits of doing it at the same time every day, doing it, making sure, and also just do it every day, code every day. If you
Yeah.
want to learn fast, you have to also like think of yourself now, starting now as a developer. And what do developers do? They develop. So like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think project oriented is really well. So just start creating passion projects and start doing it every day.
Yeah.
Don't like, don't put it off. Don't because you put it to the side, you find a new shiny thing, and then you lose your way.
Yeah. I want to give a tip for everybody, or a couple tips about a passion project, because I think that's something that we talk about a lot and we don't really explain what that means or how to start that. And I think that would help a lot of people. So to define sort of what a
Isn't that an OnlyFans clone? Is that
no,
a
no, no,
passion
Right.
project?
no,
Well,
different kind of
actually,
passion.
a cloning something might is a good way to do it too, though. Like trying to duplicate a site
Yeah,
that you like or something is a good start. Yeah.
that is a good start. So if you want to, you know, we did this. I remember like a long time ago, right when we left boot camp, we actually had a small group of other people from our boot camp, and we started like rebuilding I think it was like Papa John's website, and that was pretty cool.
Mhm.
Like you learn a
Yeah.
lot from looking at other websites that are really high quality and trying to build what they do. So that's a good one. But
It also
what,
forces you to think about how to break it down, right? How to break that
yeah,
project apart and like communicating with others, which is really helpful as well.
yeah, definitely. I wouldn't consider that necessarily a passion project though, because you're
No, but like,
duplicating what somebody else did. So to me, what a passion project means is something obviously that you're passionate about. And that could be OnlyFans for you, Randall, if that's what you're
Mhm.
passionate about. But for most people, it probably won't be. And so here's what I think of when it comes to like building a passion project. This is the way that I typically go about it. And these will come to you at any time of the day. So when they do come to you, just write them down because you will forget it. Like write it down immediately. So the best passion project is a problem that recurs in your life and that software can solve, right? And these are all sorts of small things, right? Like they could be anything under the sun that you're just going through your day, and it's one of those things where like, oh, I just wish I had a solution for this. And most of the time there is something simple, and they're small things. I'm gonna give one away because I don't know if people will do this, and if not, even cool. Like I'm happy that people do this. Okay, this is something that happens to my girlfriend and I very often. Is that we're like, hey, let's go out to dinner, and we're like, yeah, but where are we gonna go? There's no good restaurants around here, and then we spend an hour and a half to 2 hours deciding where to go to a restaurant, and we end up going to like usually the same one anyway because we just can't decide, or we just don't know what options. So here's an idea of like how you can turn that problem into a passion project, right? Some idea of that would be use the Google API, the Maps API, to map your location and all of the restaurants within a given area. So you can have a drop down menu that says, how far are you willing to drive to go to a restaurant? And then you can use the Google Maps API, pull every restaurant within that area. Maybe you can select different types of restaurants that you're willing to go to, like a Mexican restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, Thai restaurant, something like that.
Or even on rating.
On rating, yeah, there's all these different things, right? And then you have like a random selection. It's just a wheel that spins and then it picks one for you. That is an amazing passion project because it shows a developer that one, you understand a problem and a solution. You can integrate with an API. You can maybe use a database or have people sign in to use the thing as well. Um, and it's something that you probably are not thinking of. It's not one of these simple projects that's like tic-tac-toe or a to-do list or something like that that just looks stupid on your portfolio. I'm sorry, but those look horrible on your portfolio. They actually take away from it, in my opinion, because a employer is going to look at a
Right.
tic-tac-toe or a to-do list and know that you didn't code that on your own. You actually followed a tutorial more likely.
Yeah.
And so this is something where they're like, yeah, that's probably, there's no like YouTube video about building this like restaurant selector. Maybe there is, but it's something unique, right? And it's something that you can actually share a story about of why you chose to do this and what challenges you ran into in doing this and why you made the decision to use the rating versus the type of restaurant or things like that. And that shows more of your problem solving skills, your like mental aptitude as a developer. And so that's what I would consider a passion project, right? And it's something that like solves a problem for me, which means more than likely it's solving a problem for somebody else. And then you can charge for it too, because people will probably pay for that. Or you could run ads on top of that, or whatever it is, right? You can start making money from a passion project, but you can't make money from a tic-tac-toe app or a to-do list, right? Nobody's paying for those things because there's a million of them under the sun.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that. Anyway, with that, that is our episode for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. My name's Russell. I'm here with Danny and Randall, and we will see
Before
you.
we
Oh,
go, Before we go, if you're having a hard time getting started, if maybe you're not that outgoing and you're looking for a group and you have a little bit of money in your piggy bank, check out codenoobs.io/mentoring and come join us with our web dev incubator, where we will literally take you and get you hired as a web developer within a year.
yeah,
Or you can keep on working with us for free until you do. So check that out. And for those of you already in there, we'll see you at 10 o'clock.
sounds good. Thanks for that announcement. And thank you guys again for tuning in. We love having you here. Thanks for all the questions and the comments. And like we mentioned before, use this group. It's for you guys. So if you're running into any of these issues or you want to learn faster, post your stuff in the group, right? We're here to support you. So love you guys. Have a good day. Enjoy your Saturday. And we will see you next week at Saturday at 9 a.m.
See ya.
Peace.
Peace.